Hi guys, my name's Drew. I'm going to be walking you through the Vintage Cruiser 19 RBS by Gulfstream today. We're going to start right up front here with the loading and unloading procedure. As this coupler sits here, this would be the unlocked position. This is going to be the starting position for us. From here, we're going to go ahead and raise this jack 3 inches above our ball. We're then going to back our ball underneath the coupler, of course centered underneath the coupler here. Once we are centered, we're going to go ahead and lower that jack down. Once all that weight is on the on the ball and drop, we go ahead and slide this locking coupler forward. We are paying special attention that these tabs on each side of that latch are engaged there into the frame, so we want those to be resting nice and flush. From there, we're going to go ahead and take your tow chain hooks. We are going to cross those underneath the coupler and hook those onto the receiver like so. We're paying special attention that we have enough room to make our turns left to right, but not so much room that these are going to make contact with the pavement. It is state law in Texas that, again, these can not only, should not only not make contact with the pavement, but they do also need to be crossed underneath the coupler. So just make sure we are doing both of those things. Riding right next to those tow chains, we have your emergency breakaway cord here. Now this is going to ride on its own separate connection point on the receiver, whether that be a carabiner or a quick link. It does not come standard with the camper. That's going to be something that you add once you take delivery of the unit. Now, again, same rule of thumb, enough room to make your turns left to right, but not so much room that your emergency breakaway is going to drag. Just for your information, your emergency breakaway is your last line of defense. If these other tow components were to fail as the two vehicles separate, this is going to act like a ripcord to the electric brakes, effectively stopping a runaway camper scenario. So it is very important that this is hooked up correctly in the event of an emergency. So very straightforward stuff there. We have your 7-way plug here. This is going to plug into the corresponding receptacle of your vehicle. This is going to give you full function to your tow vehicle's charging system, braking system, and lighting system. So again, make sure you have that corresponding 7-way receptacle wired up into your vehicle. Hopping up here to the jack, of course we have up or down operation clearly marked there on the toggle switch. We have a secondary toggle switch here that's going to control the light on the underside of the jack. That is going to light your way here if you are doing any of that coupling and uncoupling after dark, as well as give you a point of reference if you are backing up to the unit again after dark. Moving right along, behind that jack we have your two 20-pound propane tanks. These are going to be full for you when you do pick up your unit. Open and close valve on the top. I find most people are somewhat familiar with the operation of these propane cylinders. To remove them for service, we're going to, of course, unscrew this oversized wing nut here, disconnect the pigtails of the regulator, kind of slump that over the way, rotate this T-bar out of the way again, and that will allow us to go ahead and pull those off again to either have them filled or serviced. In between the two tanks, you do have a propane regulator. Now this is going to be an automatic switchover regulator. What that means is if we have both service valves on top of the tanks open, we directionalize it to whichever one we want to use as our primary tank. As it depletes the gas from that tank, it will automatically switch over here to that secondary tank and allow you to go ahead and draw off of that one. Of course, if you want to have a greater understanding of where your propane levels sit, keep that secondary valve in the closed position, that primary valve in the open position. At that point, you're going to have to manually switch over to that secondary tank. At that time, you can go ahead and get your primary tank filled. Back behind all of that, we have a brand new Interstate D-cycle battery. Biggest thing with this is just going to be some small amount of maintenance that it carries. Every 90 days or 2 or 3 times a year, we're going to go ahead and remove these vent panels on each side of the battery. Underneath those panels, we'll find a clear marked water level. It is just our goal to maintain that water level with distilled water as necessary. Also for periods of long-term storage, we're going to go ahead and disconnect these battery terminals, allow them to kind of lay there What that's going to do is that's going to take any nominal or phantom draws off of that battery and essentially isolate it from the 12-volt system. Down below that, we have a sewage hose storage tube here. Does have a door here on this side. That's going to allow you to have a place to go ahead and store your sewage hose away from your other components. One thing I didn't mention is your propane cover, which is this guy here, is going to slip over your propane tanks. That's going to help protect against any road debris, as well as keep that weather off the tanks. One thing to note about that is going to be the orientation of the cover. And when we do put it in place, we just want these black latches and the door to be directionalized towards towards the rear of the unit to keep this from catching wind when you're going down the road. This does just slip over top of those and is held in place by this little Velcro strip here. Moving on, we have your pass-through storage compartment here. Does have a LED light strip across the top of that compartment. Controls for that are going to be on the other side. We'll get to that when we make our way over to that side of the camper. We also have stabilizer jacks on all four corners of the unit. Now these are for stabilization, they're not for leveling. Leveling from front to back is going to be done with the tongue jack. Leveling from left to right is going to be done with a leveling kit and the tires. Once we are within 3 degrees of level, we're going to go ahead and run these down. Utilizing this crank handle, you'll come down, make contact with the pavement, maybe a quarter turn more just to shore everything up. Same on the way up, no need to go overly tight. Up top here, I have your potable water fill. That's how we're going to fill that onboard water tank. We're going to stick a drinking water hose directly in here. Of course, after we remove the cap, stick a garden hose directly in there or a drinking water hose. Once it fills up or overflows, you cap it back off. You do need to use the onboard water pump to draw that water up from the tank to the fixtures and make it usable. Now, manufacturer recommends that anytime the unit is going to be in storage for more than 7 days, that we do go ahead and drain all of the water from the systems. If this tank has been in use, make sure you do drain it. Now to drain it, you're going to have to kind of crawl underneath the unit a little bit. Not exactly sure how well this is going to show up on film, but we have a drain line there. It does just have a PVC plug inside of there to drain that tank. It is a gravity feed system. We just go ahead and remove that plug. All of your freshwater holding tank will be drained from that location. Moving on here, we have your city water connection. This is going to be what you're going to use in the capacity of an RV park. If you have access to full-time running water, you're of course going to use your city water connection. Now, water pressure becomes very important when we do talk about the city water connection because we do not want to overpressurize the lines within this camper. So these units are designed to have a working water pressure generally between 40 and 75 psi. And we do include a water pressure regulator with your purchase. What you're going to do with that water pressure regulator is hook that directly onto the water source or the spigot side of your hose. And then of course your hose onto that. And then we'll make this connection here on the camper by rotating this city water connection. Always, always, always want to use a water pressure regulator. And again, it's going to be my recommendation to hook that onto the spigot side of the hose to keep any weight, excess weight off of this plastic connection we have on the trailer. Beside that, we have your spray port. This is a quick disconnect or quick connect spray port. What that means is you're going to slide that locking collar back. You're going to insert the male end of that sprayer hose. Once you are connected, that locking collar snaps forward. That hose is going to automatically pressurize whether you're using the water pump or a city water connection. Once you do so, it is usable at that point. When you go ahead and disconnect it, very similar, just slide that locking collar back. Tire pressure and lug nuts here. Now, manufacturer recommends a 100 foot-pound lug torque on these lug nuts. They also recommend a retorque procedure. The first 10, 25, 50, and 100 miles of travel, it's very important that we remove those hubcaps and we retorque those down to 100 foot-pounds. Manufacturer further recommends that at the start of each trip thereon after that we do go ahead and make sure they are maintaining that level of torque. Tire pressure is also very important. With any trailer tires, we run them at the max tire pressure rating. You can not only find that stamped into the sidewall of the tire, but you can also find it here on this yellow and white data tag. 75 PSI is going to be the max tire pressure rating, and that's exactly where we want to run them. That's going to give us the highest flexibility in terms of weight. Whether we're completely empty or completely full, that 75 PSI is going to be a great number. Now we have your hood vent here. This is held in place by friction. So this is again the exhaust vent for your stove. One thing we want to make sure is that we open it before preparing a meal there on the stove, and then close it before going down the road. It's going to help keep any road debris and weather when going down the road. Of course, you want to open it before you prepare a meal so that hot air can be exhausted from that location. Back of your refrigerator vent here. From a maintenance standpoint, not too terribly much you're going to be doing here. Not really what we would consider a customer serviceable unit. Biggest thing with these propane burning appliances is going to be protection from the intrusion of mud daubers and flying insects. With this specific appliance, you're going to do so by screening this vent cover off further than what we see here. They do again have specifically cut store-bought screens you can use to do so, or if you want to go ahead and DIY something, that's of course absolutely up to you. But either way, it is going to be best suited if you do protect it. It is very expensive to clean any nests out from the appliance in the event that any of those critters make this their new home. So other than that, we have your condensation hose here. We want to make sure that's routed through the vent as best we can. And then we go ahead and line the tabs up there on the top. Seat those square pegs in the holes. Once everything's nice and flush, we go ahead and give these a turn there and lock them down. I always go back, make sure that it is in fact locked on, and then we're ready for travel. Down below here we have your furnace vent. Now this is an exhaust vent. It's most important that we do let it exhaust. We don't want to restrict the flow at all, make sure it is free breathing. Other than that, it is an intrusion point for mud daubers and flying insects as well, so we do want to make sure we are also screening that off. Down below here we have your sewer outlet connection and your wastewater holding tanks as well as your sewage holding tank. These are marked here with stickers on the body. On the left is what would be considered your gray water holding tank. On the right is what's going to be considered your black water holding tank. So what that means for you when it comes to operation of these tanks, number one, these valves should never be opened at the same time. You want to avoid any cross-contamination or backfeeding issues. Number two, they should be left in the closed position during use, and you're going to use the monitor panel on the inside, and you're only going to dump as they fill up. Excuse me, two scenarios where you're going to dump. Either the tank is full or you're switching locations at that point. A very common series of events is going to be dumping the black water first, which is again going to be this one here on the right. We're going to pull that. We're going to allow all that sewage waste to evacuate from the tank. We're going to close that off. We're then going to open the gray water tank. We're going to rinse that shared plumbing and our sewage hose on the way out. Now we already saw our sewage hose. That is going to connect here onto the bayonet style fitting the very same way that cap comes off. So you'll have 4 prongs along the outside of that tube. We're going to either line the keyholes of the cap or the sewage hose in the halfway position, give it a quarter turn. That's going to go ahead and lock it on. Very straightforward, but it is very important that we do operate this correctly. Especially with that black water tank, we don't want to have any compounding of that toilet paper and body waste within the tank. Now, while we're talking about that black water holding tank, we're going to jump up here and talk about your black water tank flush. Now, this corresponds with a jet inside the black water tank and is specifically designed to help blast off compounded toilet waste, body waste, things like that. Very important that you do not overflow the tank while using this black water tank flush because the path of least resistance of that tank is going to be the rooftop septic vents. Of course, you want to avoid that sewage water from transitioning down the roof line and of course raining down on the side of the camper. So when utilizing this black tank flush, which I recommend you do so every single time you dump your waste from the unit, what you're going to do is hook any old garden hose onto that barb there. We're going to allow water to rush in with this black water tank valve in the closed position. We're going to again use the monitor panel on the inside. We're going to watch that tank fill up. Once it reaches about 2/3 full, we're then going to relieve the pressure here at the black water valve. We're going to repeat that until we are fairly certain that we have completely cleaned the tank. Again, something you want to be very aware of while you're doing is going to be the level of water within that tank. You absolutely do not want to overflow it. Beside that, we have cable and satellite inlets here. These are standard RG6 cable fittings. These are just going to be a pass-through connection to the designated TV area of the camper, and they allow you to go ahead and feed those services again to the inside of the unit. We have your 30 amp power supply here. Now this is only going to plug into the unit one way. So if we go ahead and look here at that plug, you see you have one L-shaped prong and two slanted prongs, and we have the corresponding plug there. We go ahead and line everything up, give it an 1/8 inch turn to the right, that locks it in. Then we do have a secondary collar here to lock it in and secure the cord completely. It's going to be my recommendation for every single unit that I deliver that you go ahead and add a surge protector in line with your power supply. With any surge protector, that's going to hook directly onto the power pole. Your power supply is then going to hook into that, and then of course ultimately making its connection here at the camper. Surge protector is truly the only thing you can do to protect your unit from surges, dirty power, substandard wiring, things like that. Of course, there are a ton of sensitive electronics within the unit, and it is again very important that we do protect those from those scenarios. If we go ahead and take a look down here underneath the J-wrap, we have your low point drains. Now these are the lowest point in the unit's plumbing. This is also going to be a stop within draining the system. So this is how we're going to drain everything in between water source and fixture is going to be drained here. Again, we have those similar screw down plugs. Just go ahead and remove those. It's a gravity feed system. Again, that's going to drain the point A to point B plumbing from this location. Hopping up here to the water heater. Now, manufacturer has two very specific recommendations with the water heater. Number one is going to be draining it anytime the unit's going to be in storage for more than 7 days. And number two is going to be priming the water heater or pumping 6 gallons of water into the inside of that tank before we go ahead and start heating any water. Now, starting with the depressurizing and draining procedure, you're of course going to, number one, give it ample time to cool down. Generally a lot longer than you would think, at least a couple hours. Once we're fairly certain of the temperature, we're then going to depressurize the unit. Now you can go ahead and depressurize the unit from any fixture within the unit, and we're going to use the hot side of that fixture to do so. So whether that's the shower, bathroom sink, kitchen sink, any of those will do. So initially you cut the inflow of water to the unit completely, so we have no new water flowing into the unit. If that means the city water connection, we go ahead and physically turn that off at the valve. If that means the potable water tank, we just turn off the 12-volt water pump. So with no new water pressurizing the system overall, we then relieve this pressure within the tank by just simply turning the hot side of any fixture on. Once we cease to see water coming from that hot side of any fixture, that is our indicator that we have depressurized the unit here. Once the unit is depressurized, we are safe to drain it, and we're going to do so by utilizing an 1 1/16 socket and extension and backing your drain plug out here. Once you do so, the remaining 4 to 5 gallons of water within the unit are going to drain from this location. Now this drain plug is not only of course a drain plug, but it is also your anode rod. An anode rod is a 3/4 inch by 12 inch piece of magnesium that acts like a magnet for hard water deposits and calcification, things like that. They deposit on the end of that anode rod as opposed to the inside of the water heater. It is a consumable part. I would expect to get a year or two in between anode rod changes. And again, you're going to be well aware of the condition of your anode rod because you're going to be inspecting it every time you drain it, and you're going to be draining the water heater anytime the unit's going to be in storage for more than 7 days. So with everything drained, we've inspected our anode rod. It's time to go ahead and return the unit back to service. We're going to have to prime or fill that water heater with 6 gallons of water, of course, before using it. So to do so, we're now going to introduce or pressurize the water system overall with the unit. Again, if that's going to be the city water connection, we're just going to turn that water source on. If it's going to be the potable water tank, we're going to flip that 12-volt water pump on. Once that system is overall pressurized, we're again going to go to the hot side of any fixture on the inside of the unit. We're going to turn that on. This time we're going to see some water come out, but the flow is going to be very airy, very spitty. What that means is that it is displacing the water within the air within the tank, refilling it with water. Once that flow normalizes at the fixture, that is of course our indicator that we have 6 gallons of water within the unit. We can go ahead and choose our power source and start heating that water. Now this is a dual source water heater, runs on a 110 volt heating element as well as propane gas with 12 volt direct spark ignition. If we're going to utilize the 110 volt heating element, we're going to turn that on at this location here. You do have an on and off toggle switch that is directly behind that propane water heater or propane regulator. Now, biggest limitation of that 110 volt switch and the location of it is going to be that I know people end up forgetting that they do have it on. They then go ahead and drain the water heater per manufacturer's recommendations. But as long as the unit is hooked up to power, that switch is in the on position, it's going to create a dry fire scenario, which is heating the water up heating the unit up without any water within the unit. And it's definitely going to be something we want to avoid. It can actually damage the appliance. Now your propane source switch, that's going to be on the inside of the unit. They do separate the location of those switches. We're going to get to that on the inside. I'll show you how to go ahead and light this on propane and utilize that switch on the inside. Again, this is a propane burning appliance, so we do want to go ahead and further screen not only these louvers, but this grating off. And again, we're going to use those store-bought, specifically cut screens to do so. Moving on here to the rear of the unit. Not too terribly much to speak of here on the rear. Of course, we have your tail lights, marker lights, things like that. With all vintage cruisers, they do come pre-wired for a rear view camera. That is essentially going to be a plug-and-play setup, very easy to add at any time. If you do have any interest in adding that at any time, feel free to give our parts department a call. They'd be happy to give you a price or some information on what that's going to entail. Moving it on here to the entry door side of the unit, we have kind of a TV area set up with the unit. Of course, you have a TV mount here mounted right onto the side. Idea being is that you could take your TV from inside the mount and all and go ahead and install it in this location. From there, you can power the TV with your 110 volt outlets here. And then we have another cable pass through. What we saw on the other side would be an inlet. This would be an outlet of those services. And again, would allow you to feed cable services to your porch area of the unit. Other than that, speakers, awning, lights, things like that we're going to get to on the inside. We'll talk about those switches in their location on the inside. Step very easily folds up and in. Fold the bottom step up and then just scoot these in. It's going to lock in that in position. So you just give it a lift up, pull out, slip down, you're ready to go. Again, the other side of that large pass-through compartment, a couple switches here. One is, of course, going to be for that LED light strip in the compartment itself. The other is going to be for these small LEDs on the front of the camper. So you have one on each side, kind of marker lights again. And then we have a solar plug here. Now that's a ZAMP style solar plug. That's going to be a direct connection to the battery. What that's going to allow you to do is utilize any of those briefcase folding style panels. They plug in this location. They're essentially plug and play. Take your panel out into the sun. The charge controller that is built directly onto the panel is going to take in energy as necessary. Once that battery is topped off, it's going to stop taking in energy. It's a very cool feature. Allows you to kind of push your off-grid footprint a little bit further. Just about concludes it here on the exterior of the vintage cruiser. We're going to hop on the inside and start taking a look at those features. All right, so right here into the entry door of the unit, we first up have your fire extinguisher. Now this is of course a very important piece of your safety equipment. With all of your safety equipment within the unit, it's very important that we do test that before taking the unit out. To do so, we're going to press that green tab down. If it springs back, that means we have life. If it stays depressed, that means it's time to pull the unit out and replace. Dropping down here, we have your step light. Now that's just going to light this fold down step to light your way if you are coming into the unit at dark or exiting the unit. It's nice to be able to see where you're going. And then we have your awning switch here. So this is a momentary switch. If I hold that, that will start to bring that awning out. We can of course see that happening here. If I take my finger off the switch, it stops. You can choose how far in or out you want to go ahead and run that awning. Coming up here to your light switch cluster here. First one up is going to be those LED lights for the awning, and we saw those there on the outside. And this next one is going to be the blue lighting for the speakers. I don't believe those were on when we were on the outside, but just some cool little blue lights. And then we have a courtesy light. So this is just a light switch you can hit when coming into the unit at dark. This particular one's going to light those 3 lights going down the center, allow you to come into the unit, turn on the rest of the lights as necessary. Then we of course have this other switch. This is just going to be the lights here on top of the cabinetry, on or off there. So very straightforward stuff. Coming here into the bedroom of the unit, we get a good look at the both style of windows within the unit. Of course, on the the driver's side there, we have your emergency exit window. That is going to be the exit location in the event that your entry door is blocked. And then on my side, we have your standard slider window, which has a locking tab here. You go ahead and slide that open. Of course, all of the windows are going to have those same style shades. And then when we close it, we just want to make sure we lift that up, pull it firmly closed, again making sure that it is closed. Cabinetry here on either side of the bed, designed hanging closed down low, folded closed up top, very standard stuff. We have your reading lights here. They come on blue. Hold them for a couple seconds, they're going to turn to a bright white LED. And then we also have storage on the underside of the bed, as well as your freshwater holding tank. Freshwater holding tank storage, as well as your spare tire, which is going to be underneath this board here. So in the event of an emergency, you need to change a tire, this is going to be that location. And then I'm going to pop over here to this emergency exit window so you can actually see the operation of that. And of course you just unlatch it here. That will allow you to go ahead and open it. That is going to be the position if you're actually using it as a window. In the event of emergency, you go ahead and you yank this screen out. That window will open fully like a doggy door and allowing you to escape from the unit there. Above the bed here we have a little vent. Now this doesn't have a fan or anything on it. It is just a vent for fresh air. Make sure it is closed before going down the road. And then one thing I missed when we came here into the entry door is going to be your smoke alarm. Another piece of your safety equipment is going to be the smoke alarm. This one of course is driven by a 9-volt battery. Very important that we do again test this every time we take the unit out. Keep a spare 9-volt battery with the unit in the event that it does run low when using the unit. Over here within the kitchen area, we got some switch on the bottom here that's going to control these blue lights on the underside of the cabinetry. A really cool feature, especially with the blue lights there on the stove. And then we have your lights here underneath the cabinetry. Those are going to be push button lights, and that pretty much goes for every light within the unit, whether it's on the switch or not. We do have the option to turn that on and off independently. Also down here on the underside, we have a couple USB chargers, a couple 110 volt outlets, and then we have the light switch for the underside cabinet lights on this side. Sink is very kind of standard. It's stainless steel, one bay sink, works exceptionally well. Has a nice countertop extender that will give you some more room if you're prepping a meal here in this location. If we go ahead and move on within the kitchen here, we have a hood vent here, standard operation, of course light, fan, very much as to what you're probably used to. If I go ahead and open up this cooktop here, this is a propane cooktop, of course, sparker igniter on the stove top. So if I were to turn that to high, I would turn this clockwise until that actually lit up there. Same with the oven. So we can light the oven pilot light as well. You're going to turn this to the flame. You're going to hold this in, and we're going to rotate this sparker until that pilot light lights up on the oven. Once the thermocouple is heating up enough, we can go ahead and choose our temperature here. These cool blue lights are, of course, on the switch, as well as that's how you turn on the light inside the stove, or the stove there, or oven, excuse me. Other than that, it goes without saying, this glass top is not a griddle, it's not a cooked surface. Make sure these burners and grates have cooled down before we do go ahead and shut this down. Standard run-of-the-mill microwave here, turntable style microwave. Very indicative of what you're probably used to seeing in terms of control. Really nothing too crazy in terms of that. Turning around here into the dinette area, of course these lights that we see here are going to be switched on directly at the fixture itself. And then we have your drive unit also on this side of the camper. Now that's going to be your multimedia center. That's going to give you access to CD, DVD, AM, FM radio, Bluetooth. All of those features are going to be utilized through this single unit. Very easy to kind of navigate through. And you do have different zones here. Those are going to be these buttons here, zone 1, zone 2. You are going to control the volume separate with each zone. Zone 1 is of course going to be the interior zone. Zone 2 is going to be the exterior zone. Of course, this unit's going to carry its own service manual. If you have any questions about operation of that unit, feel free to either give us a call or consult the manual there. We also have your dinette area here. Now this does make a secondary bed. This is a very standard pedestal style dinette. So what that means for you is that the tabletop is going to separate from the support poles here on the floor. So you'll kind of work everything loose. Once you've done so, you're going to again separate this into 3 pieces, tabletop and 2 support poles. You're going to go ahead and remove the support poles, put them off to the side. You're then going to take this tabletop, and if we see on each side here of the dinette, we have a Velcro lined ledge, and then on the tabletop we have Velcro as well. We're just going to line up both surfaces. That's going to hold that nice and secure on that Velcro. We're then going to take each back of each cushion and use that to fill out the mattress here. And again, that's going to be an excellent sleeping area for a small adult or large child, whichever you prefer. Down low here we have your fuse panel breaker box. Now that's going to house most of what's going on within the unit electronically. On the right side we have your automotive blade style fuses. They are clearly marked in terms of function. Now those are going to be replaceable in the event one were to burn out, so go ahead and make sure you keep some spares with the unit in the event that you need one out there in the wild. We also have your 110 volt breakers here. Now those are resettable just like your fuse panel breaker box at home, and again we see those clearly marked in terms of function right there on the side. Underneath the dinette here we have a 110 volt outlet as well, and then we have another piece of safety equipment, which is going to be your carbon monoxide LP leak detector. And again, this is something that we do in a test every single time we take the unit out. We do so by pushing the test button here. In the event of an emergency, it's going to audibly indicate to you, as well as give you flashing lights there to tell you which gas it is sensing, again, in the event of an emergency. Behind me here, we have your Dometic thermostat. This is, of course, how we control the furnace. We're going to flip this switch on. That's going to kick that blower motor on immediately. 16 seconds after that, it actually ignites. We do choose our comfort level here. So we slide that to our designated comfort level. It will ignite again 16 seconds after that. By that 30-second mark, it's producing noticeable heat. Generally, by that minute and a half mark, it may or may not go ahead and set off your smoke alarm. Per manufacturer's recommendations, that is totally within specs. It could possibly do so within the first 15 minutes of operation. Once that efficiency rating goes up, it goes up as it burns, I should say, it will stop setting off that smoke alarm. Of course, best suited not to remove the battery or anything like that. Just let it run through its, run through its process, and you'll be good. Again, another fixture we see here with the switch right there on the fixture itself. Coming in here, first up to the TV section of the unit. Of course, these vintage cruisers do not come standard with a television, but they do give you that mount. Now, again, the idea being is you mount your TV onto this mount here. You can, of course, utilize it in this position, or when you're inclined to do so, you can go ahead and take it out to the outside and use it out there. Now, that does very easily just slide into position. Of course, you see the mount there. You're going to go ahead and lift it up, let it slide there into position, and it locks back by lining up this plug here with that keeper, and of course putting a fair amount of pressure on it. That's going to go ahead and lock it on. Down below here, we have kind of your power sources for your television. We have, of course, a multitude of different 110 volt outlets, a couple 12 volt USB chargers as well. Now, this is going to essentially be the back of your DVD player. So what this does is, of course, this is the wiring or the other side for your drive unit here. So this is where you're going to make your connection from TV to DVD player, and you're going to do so with, of course, the red, white, and yellow cord. Beside that, we have your antenna booster plate. Now, this is not only where those exterior cable fittings that we saw outside are going to terminate, but this is also how you turn the omnidirectional digital over-the-air television antenna on the roof on. If you see that green light on by pushing that button, that means that antenna is on. From there, you just go ahead and do a channel search. It's going to automatically find the best signal and going to go ahead and bring programming in dependent on that signal. You can only use you can either have a cable service running through that line or utilizing the antenna. So if you want to take advantage of the park cable service, that green light needs to be on. If you're doing digital over-the-air television, that green light needs to go on. The secondary fitting here is going to be for an aftermarket satellite package. And then here we have your micro monitor panel or convenience center. It does go by a few different names. This is going to give you a real-time readout of where your tanks sit and level of full. So here on the bottom, the more lights we see, the fuller it is. We have battery. Battery is going to read full anytime you're plugged into shore power. To get a true readout of where your battery sits, you do need to unplug from shore power and then test from this location. Fresh water is full, black water is empty, gray water is empty. Below that, we have your water pump switch. Again, on or off, easy toggle switch. Red light means it's on. Of course, in that position, it would be off. Refrigerator here, Dometic refrigerator. It has its control board right here on top of the freezer. Very easy to turn on and off and use. So you have just essentially one control button. You turn it on. That's going to kick you generally into auto mode. On auto mode, it's going to default to 110 volt electricity if it's available. If that becomes interrupted or is unavailable, it's going to automatically start lighting on gas. If we want to choose to run it on gas, we just depress that gas button. That auto indicator light goes out, and then it's going to start trying to light on gas. Now, there is no real indicator that it is running on gas other than the position of the switch. So if it fails to light on gas, the only indicator is going to be this check light. So just keep in mind, since it is hidden here, you heard that audible sound once I started it up. That's going to be your cue that there is an issue, is going to be that audible sound. One thing we didn't talk about is going to be air conditioner controls up front here. If we go ahead and look here at the unit, we have your thermostat here, and then we have your mode button here. If we're looking here at the gray scale, we have a 3 fan speeds, low, medium, and high. The gray is just going to be fan only. The blue is going to be fan with conditioned air. That would be low, medium, high. Very easy to use there. And again, then we have this setting within the setting. We can hear that refrigerator actually indicating to us that it's not lighting on gas because we don't have the gas turned on. So that's actually going to be the indicator that you would be hearing in the event of an issue. So back to the air conditioner. Of course, 3 speeds there in terms of fan or conditioned air. Very easy to navigate through that. If we go ahead and turn it off, we do have louvers there, so that's going to push all that air down, or we can directionalize it front to back, left to right. Again, you have a ton of options when it does come to directionalizing. It does have a washable filter underneath this grating. Every so often you're going to go ahead and remove this grating with a flat-bladed screwdriver. Just go ahead and pry it out of the way. You'll see that filter, take that filter out, rinse it off in the sink, replace it once it's dried, and you're going to be good for months to come. I think I've pretty much hit most things here in the living area. We're going to go ahead and step here into the bathroom, start talking about some stuff in there. Of course, you have this very large corner shower. I love the shower in these vintage cruisers with these large doors. It just gives you a ton of space, which is awesome. Above that, we have an exhaust fan here. This is going to help pull any moisture from the air. So if we go ahead and open this up here, we can then go ahead and choose our fans here, fan speed here. Now this is either going to bring air in or exhaust it. So you have the out or exhaust options on the right side of that off indicator. And then on the left side, you have those air in options. So you can go ahead and operate that how you choose to. Be aware that it does need to be closed before going down the road. Generally, we'll make the joke that it's something you only forget once because it's probably not going to be there when you get to where you're going. Pedal style flush. It'll be a light to press to fill the bowl up with water, full press to flush. Make sure we're always using a single ply RV grade toilet paper, as well as some chemical treatment for the tank, whether that's a deodorizer or tissue dissolver. Both of those products are going to be introduced from this location. And it is also my recommendation that you do go ahead and store the unit with some deodorizer in that tank. That's going to help, again, keep those smells down when you do return the unit back to service. Now here on this side of the door, we have some stuff going on. We have your light switch for the bathroom itself, and then we have your water heater switch here. Now this is going to be the propane side of your water heater. We talked about that a little bit there on the outside. If I go ahead and turn that switch on, that red light comes on. Now that red light is ultimately our indicator on whether or not the appliance has lit on propane. You may see that light come on and off as it's going through its lighting cycle, but ultimately if you come back 5 minutes later and that red light's still on, that means the unit did not light on propane. Could be for a multitude of different reasons. Either you're out of propane gas, you have the tanks closed, or oftentimes it's just the gas just hasn't made its way through the line to the appliance in time. In the event that happens, go ahead and of course investigate, make sure that everything looks as it should. You have gas in the tank, the valves are open. If both of those things are in line, then just come in here, flip the switch off, flip it back on. It's going to recycle. Generally, as long as you've corrected both those issues, it's going to light on the first try of the second cycle. Other than that, of course, you have storage, cabinetry, things like that, sink fixture there. Important down here, we have your main GFI outlet. Now, all the receptacles within this unit are on the same circuit. In the event that one of them gets overloaded, they kind of all follow suit. This is that central reset location. This is where you're going to want to return those outlets back to service. Very easy, very straightforward, just like in your bathroom at home. Just about covers it here on the inside. of the vintage cruiser. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to give us a call. We really hope you enjoyed the walkthrough. Thank you very much.